Afternoon, guys. How are you? We very sincerely hope that you are well in these anxiety inducing times. It can't be easy. It's not easy for me. I'm sure it's not easy for my peers and colleagues in the organization. But sadly, all we have to talk about is more bad news, which is very difficult for many people to cope with. A family member told me not so long ago, if I had to do your work, I would, it's a terrible thing that they said, and I don't even know if I should repeat it, but I would kill myself. In other words, it would drive me to suicide to be constantly engaged with such negativity. And that's fair enough. Nevertheless, it's my job to at least partly report on what is going on that is of relevance to us as Saitlanders, of relevance to our organization, and of relevance to you as individuals, of relevance to the national emergency plan that we are endeavoring to prepare and to be able to erect it at short notice in the time that lies ahead, and so on. So I'm going to sadly have to share another sad story with you. I have traveled quite a lot through Africa, and not as much as some people, but I think I've been to roughly 23 of the 54 countries, and I've been to Nigeria, for instance. I think it's again the number 23 times. And I remember in the early days seeing many of the facilities that had been built in Africa either by colonial powers or subsequently by the Chinese or whoever, and thinking to myself, what a crying shame it is that those facilities are derelict, and how much potential they have. For instance, in Nigeria, there's a state theatre, I can't remember its real name, that goes by the nickname of the General's Hat. It looks a bit like a general's hat. And I had to do a big show there, and I wanted to use the state theatre, so I went and had a look at it, and it was derelict and decrepit. And I thought, gee, if only I had the money, I could make some big tom out of this place. It would cost a couple of $100,000 to repair, but then you could rent it out very well and very often. The Nigerians, because of the decrepit state of many of these facilities, pay enormous sums of money, absurd sums of money, to create venues whenever they're required. Look, I haven't been there for about 10 years or so. So it may be that there are more venues now than there were. But as I say, until not so long ago, they had practically no venues. And the nice venues that they could have had were in rack and ruin. And I'm reminded of that when I read the following on Marula Media. Vars Produktemark dae lank sonder krag. Published on the 2nd of November and written by Dupré de Villiers. Let me bring it up for you. There we go. Whoa, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Oh, I don't know why I can't bring it up, guys. So I'll read it to you. Hang on, let's just have another look at this. Maybe we can get this right. There we go. I think we should. Sorry guys, I'm battling a little bit here with the computer. It's struggling to cope. Okay. Varsproduktemark, dae lank sonder krag. Die kragonderbreking by Johannesburg se varsproduktemark het veral piesangs nadelig beïnvloed. There's the photograph there, and then it goes on to read, die Johannesburg varsproduktemark moes vanaf 26 tot 29 Oktober ernstige uitdagings weens kabeldiefstal trotseer. Dit was die langste kragonderbreking wat die mark nog ervaar het. Vanjaar was daar reeds 4 onderbrekings wat tussen 2 en 3 dae lang geduur het. And here it describes how the temperature in the refrigerators should be plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius, but because there was no electricity to run the refrigerators, the temperature went over 10 degrees Celsius. And we don't have to read much more. I think we all understand what we're talking about. And the commentary that I'd like to offer is that you and I have to become more and more aware of the decline and the deterioration of the basic facilities of South Africa, which decline and deterioration is ultimately going to affect us. In the same way that Nigerians are affected. I stayed in Nigeria once in Lagos for, I don't remember, but it was roughly 6 weeks. Perhaps a little bit shorter. And I stayed in an enormous flat. Biggest flat I've ever been in my life. The size of a house. It was kind of 6th or 8th floor flat. But they had electricity 1 hour a day. That was it. And it wasn't provided by the Nigerian Electricity Supply Commission, excuse me. It was provided by generator by the owners of the block of flats. And of course people paid through the nose for it. You can't believe the rental that these guys paid and the deposits that they had to put down to rent a flat. And we're looking at the same situation. You know, the Johannesburg fresh produce market, I don't know for sure, but I'm sure that I'm not far off if I speculate that it is the largest in South Africa, that it is, excuse me again, probably the largest in Africa, and it may even be the largest in the southern hemisphere, given South Africa is a hang of a lot smaller than Australia, and in many ways far more centralized around Gauteng, around Johannesburg, around the PWV. And the government can't keep it secure. The largest, arguably, probably the largest fresh produce market in the southern hemisphere, the largest in Africa. But just like they have an excuse or a whining reason for the decline of Eskom and the decline of the water reticulation and of the wastewater management and sewerage systems, so too they have a reason that is kind of beyond them. It's not me, it's not my fault, I'm the victim. Why do you hate me? They stole the cables, what can I do about it? You can do everything about it. That's how civilized societies are operated. For 2 years, did you know this? You watched the video in which we spoke about, for 2 years, no new police officers have been trained in South Africa. The Daily Friend or one of those did good coverage of that story. You ensure that for the purposes of your society, you have an adequate police force. and an adequate uh, 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 prosecuting authority and an adequate judicial authority. But they can't do it. They just can't get it right, the poor souls. And you, ladies and gentlemen, must become accustomed to the idea that sooner or later, just like the general's hat, we will have one of the most marvelous edifices of its kind, namely the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market, standing derelict and decrepit because the state simply couldn't maintain it. Just didn't have the inclination or the talent. I'd say more the inclination. I'd say it's more a matter of temperament. And very interesting research has been done on that, by the way. J. Philip Rushton, brilliant scientific, irrefutable, incontestable, incontrovertible scientific research on that, on temperament, and how it is the most significant contributing factor to failure. We will have enormous power stations standing idle, derelict and decrepit. We will have enormous water reticulation systems, unusable and unused. Because this is not going to get any better. There's no reason to believe. There's no sign other than claims. The African National Congress as a party, the African National Congress as a government, and the African National Congress effectively, by virtue of cadre deployment, as the state, offer nothing but promises. You must become accustomed to the idea that the deterioration will continue and it will accelerate, and therefore you and I shall have to secure our futures ourselves. I think that's enough on this subject. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please press the thumbs up like button. All right, everybody, take very good care of yourselves and God bless you. Bye-bye.